Hello and welcome again. This is Rick M, the GM, and I'm doing another GM tips here, back from quarantine land. No, I'm not sick, for anybody that you know right now. As I've taken temperatures and stuff, I've stayed well within line, and fortunately haven't had to deal with any of the major effects of doing a travel through 3 airports down and 3 airports back. So you can do it, and just be safe. Follow the guidelines, do the things, do the hands, do everything else, and you're good for the most part. Now, today I want to talk a little bit about, basically we'll call this multicultural campaigns. And why do I pick that topic? Not because I necessarily want to be politically correct, but because I think that multicultural campaigns have a warm inclusiveness for your players. And in order to do that, I think we as GMs and DMs need to really think about what we are incorporating for our players. So, number one, get to know the background of your players. And I always go back to this because it's, I think, one of the most important points of a GM or a DM. You got to get to know your players. You got to get to know what is important to them. Whether they're brand new, whether they've been with you for years, they have in their mind what is important. And when you design a multicultural campaign, discuss this with them. Discuss, hey, would you like to adventure in some exotic places or places maybe more familiar to you from your background? Would you like that? And I think you'll find that a lot of them will. A lot of them today, and the number one voice I hear on Twitter as I listen to that, and on Facebook and gaming, and I do pay attention to both heavily, is the point of BiPOC gamers. So, Black, Asian, Hispanic, and all other backgrounds, Indigenous. There's a lot of backgrounds that are out there that people feel like are viewed very negatively or have been done very negatively. And I think a lot of that not just falls on the material, but on the DMs and the GMs themselves. So one of the things I will say, and this is always a part of our life as DMs and GMs, find materials that you can research. Maybe they're done by somebody with that background. So a perfect example, and I don't know if I have it over here. Nope, I don't. So is Vudra. Vudra in the campaign system for the world of Galarian, in the Pathfinder world, has continents. One is like, equatorial Africa. Another is what would have been the United States and equatorial Central and South America. Then you have the Asian fusion of different cultures, and what I love about them is they don't try to fuse them all together. They're a multicultural area. And then there's Kazmaran and Vudra. So these are all different empires that represent all the different races we have here on Earth, but they're done in a different setting, this being the world of Galarian. And what I love about Paizo and what they did there, and again, not necessarily trying to sell you on their material, but this is what goes into the research. Most of their different writers are of that background or point of view. So, the person that did Vudra, Syed, I can, looking at his name, I know already he's either Persian or he is Southern Indian or Bangladeshi, maybe. And the neat part about that is he's the one that wrote on Vudra, and when I read the material, it's only 8 pages, okay, mind you. I was craving more. Because the way he brought the culture to life popped hundreds of ideas in my head as a DM or GM, okay? The same with Asia. I love how one of my players, she is part Indian, part Japanese. She throws me on the ideas of, God, I want to get to know both cultures more. And I've been to Japan, fortunately. I've gotten to do a lot of research on classical Japan. And I've listened. Like one of the sessions I had was on classical Japan by a professor that studied it, and this was at Gen Con of all places. It was an online Gen Con, but I got to listen to her tell me about the different periods and heroes and different challenges and villainy and things that were believed in that time and why things were built. Helped me get into the head much more of that culture. The same is true of China or Vietnam or Burma or Laos. You can't just assume you understand that culture unless you do a little immersion into it and get to understand it. And don't always read just from Oxford English authors. They have some great perspectives from an outside, but you got to read it from people who live it and who've grown up with it and grown up with the written and spoken records of these things. It makes a huge difference when you're trying to design things. And it really helps you to better understand and develop the areas that you want to explore with those players that they want to explore. So take the time to really immerse yourself ahead of time. Try hard to really bring that to life. I know it's difficult. For instance, me as a Germanic slash a little bit of French, a lot of English and Scottish and Irish, and a little bit of Eastern European, I understand those cultures a little better. So immerse me into a Japanese culture. If I don't do my studying, I'm going to not do it justice. I'm not going to bring it to life. So the more that I watch, and I'm not talking animes, but I'm talking things where they're exploring the history and the understanding of things, brings to life so much more. One of my coworkers is from Egypt. Love Egypt. So does my wife. It's a huge thing, ancient Egypt. So I've been watching ancient Egypt with Egyptian Egyptologists doing explorations into the mummy, the cultures, the language. It has brought so much to life. I'm like, wow, I didn't know they revered that. I didn't know that was so important. And for me to bring Egypt to life and not just be the mummy Egypt out of the mummy movies, I need to immerse myself into the reality of that culture and see through their eyes what they're seeing and try to understand why things were important that were important to them. And I think that's been the mistake with written materials. And again, I love Wizards. I don't think they tried to... People say they exploited a culture. I don't think they did that. I think they did the best they could being Anglo writers, okay? And that's us looking in. And if we don't do our research, we only know the Toshiro Mifune Japan, or we know the Last Samurai Japan. And that's not Japan. It's a small little sliver, maybe, with some truth in it. Even the fantastic Japanese movies where you see the heroes flying and do, yes, that's a part of it, but it's also not. It's the more fantastical, it's the mythical. But you also got to look at the day-to-day. It was a caste system. People believed in the caste system. They worked the caste system because that's what they knew. They didn't rage against it necessarily. It was what they always knew. And it was a part of them. And how did it affect them? And what did it do for them? So get to know the cultures, especially as they go back in time. Get to understand why things were done that were done. And why different things arose that arose. And so when your players get involved with that, you bring this to life. I mean, imagine walking down and seeing a colonnaded area where cherry trees surround. But the cherry trees draw your eye, but there's so much more. You see people wearing fancy kimonos. You see people wearing simple kimonos and yukata. And you see all kinds of other things going on. You see street hawkers hawking their stuff. But at the other time, you see vendors of craftsmanship making immense creations that are beyond imagination. See, when you give those kind of descriptions, you bring justice to the culture. And then let the players dive in deeper to go into a tea ceremony and understanding why and how the tea ceremony was so important. And even them imitating that and emulating that. Why the shrines were so embedded into the people's core. Why were shrines so important? Not just the religious aspect, but the day-to-day aspect. See, these are the things that as a DM or GM, we can bring to enrich things. Africa. Why was tribal Africa so powerful? See, people see it as a backwards culture. No. Africa had the Queen of Sheba. She was beyond anything at that time in the modern world. The African Empire grew at a young age and sprung up and then went back through a de-evolution. I won't call it de-evolution, but a decreasing of where they were. Had they been left alone, they may have evolved into something so much greater. But we thought we had to come in and do something. So try to understand the culture pre-colonial. Why were the shamans so powerful? Why was hoodoo and voodoo so embraced? And what did it mean to the people of those cultures? Why did one cultural tribe look at another and maybe didn't see them on an equal footing? What happened within their own culture that changed the world? What kind of things did they progress through? Where did they come from and where are they going? For instance, if you look at Babylon today, what was Babylon? It is not what it was in 4,000, 5,000 BC. They were at such a different level with their aqueducts and water gardens and other things that they did. But do you understand that? Do you understand what took them there? That's the big part when you design a campaign that you want to impart in the culture. You don't have to spend hours describing it. Just really think about a 2 or 3 sentence description that really makes them go, wow, I feel like I'm in this time and era. I feel like this is so important. That's what I do with Ghosts of Salt Marsh. My city of Salt Marsh isn't all northern Eluscans or Tetherians. It has Omnish. It has people from Kalimshan. It has people from as far down as the southern continents. It has people that have come in from Kartur and are a part of the culture there. I'm going to do the same with Icewind Dale. There are going to be people that have escaped from exotic lands who have brought their culture with them. And even up in the Dales, think very differently than the rest of the Dale do. And that is what draws the character's eyes. It is that rich ruby of a character that is different. For instance, I have a tabaxi that is in Saltmarsh. Why is there a tabaxi in Saltmarsh? Again, it's mostly human, right? Why is a tabaxi there? What is her purpose? What is her goals? Who is she? Why does she smell like fresh leaves and flowers and the earth? Why does she have that smell that when she enters a room you go, wow, that's refreshing. That's the outdoor primal earth. See, these are the kind of things that you weld into your campaign by blending those things. Just because you come from an area of the world doesn't mean there aren't other cultures. There are. And they bring with them, just like they did here to the United States, their culture. And that culture is important. It is base level important. And it's what's going to make the situation so cool. One of my characters in Salt Marsh wanted to have a background where she is tiefling, but somehow frost giant is mixed in. Well, how could you do that? Kostastaki. I'll get his name right. It's a tough Eastern name, Eastern European name. He is the demon lord of frost giants. She has a little bit of his blood in her. So it gives her certain abilities like, being immune to all but extreme cold. Now, a lot of GMs say that's too much power. Why? Why is it? It's not. It enriches the story she wants to tell. in that area. So knowing about these kind of things are important, and researching it is important. Also, when you do it, develop it in a way that makes sense. You can't just throw cultures in and not somehow make sense as to why that culture is here as well. Like, for instance, in the 10 towns, there's a whole city, Goodmead, that came from the far, far south, around Mazteca, in that area. Actually, not as far as that, but near there. And they are a culture that has blended in and brought their culture with them. So their whole town is that ancient culture. They still have the skin coloration, though a little bit lighter than if they were living down where they were living. So they've adapted. But they still have their traditions and their beliefs and their ways of brewing their mead and making it so special. Don't forget to capitalize on that. That stands out. That makes it so much more different. There's another town in the 10 towns that's transplanted from another place. I'm not going to give it away. But they also bring their culture with them and their ways of doing business and dealing with things. And it's different than the other 10 towns. So when you do these kind of things, you're developing. Even in yours, where you develop somewhere, make it even the small cities or towns or thorps can have blended cultures. And that's kind of the cool part. Think about small town America. How in a farm town do Chinese people come and settle? Why? Or Vietnamese, or Thai, or Cambodian, or Arabic, or Yemeni. Why? Why do they pick this place to settle? There's a reason that draws them. And yet they're a part of that. So they have the culture of the small town, but they haven't forgotten their ways of doing things from their ancestry. And you can spice up a town, a simple town, by doing that. So take the time to really write in why somebody is where they are and what brought them there. And that enriches who they are. And when you run that NPC, you bring that into the game and make it so much of a richer thing. Worlds are multicultural. People move, they migrate. Tribes migrated. A lot of people believe that the people that were in North America came from the Caucasus of Russia, or outside of Russia, just the Caucasus over there in Mongolia. Could be true. They could have done that back in the BCs. We were supposedly all one continent that broke apart. So maybe we all are from the same place, but yet we've evolved over time to better suit that area. And our culture evolved with it. So it's not the same as Mother Africa. It's changed. The Native Americans in America, the Incas, the Mayans, the Azteca, are not the same as the Hutu and Tutsi tribes of Rwanda. But there are tie-ins. There are things that link them all together as a one starting point group. But as time grew, we evolved. So to say that one group is superior to another in a world, they may think that, but that's not true. You all came from the same source, right? So if you come from the same source, we're all of that source. But we've just adapted to where we are. And our culture's adapted with it. So you bring that into the game. And again, you're not being necessarily politically correct. You're just developing the richness of what's there. See, everybody's got to get out of this politically correct mindset. Embrace the richness that each group brings. The depth of it, how unique and different it is, how their practices and how they go about things is so different. But in the same way, so just mesmerizing. And you can bring that to your game. Make sure you surround yourself with these materials. Maybe playing the music. I love playing some of the African tribal musics. I love playing the music of Korea and Japan and China and Laos. I love playing that when you're in that area of the world. It shifts your mind to a different picture. So using music, don't be afraid to use it. Just don't drown them in music, but have it there so that they go, Like I play sea shanty music and waves when they're on the dock and they're going, wow, this is kind of cool. I have monolithic stones on an island that meant something, but maybe right now people have forgotten what it meant. But it's key somehow to the whole thing and the cultures. The writings may be so old that people have to really scratch their heads and use their skills to figure them out. There's nothing wrong with that. It again enriches the experience of multiculturalism. And so that's what in a world is so cool. It's what brings people. It's what makes a gaming system agnostic to the world. Again, you can have an agnostic game with classes and everything else that people then develop to be unique. And that's the great part about it. So keep these things in mind. As you can see, I've got Roll20. So utilize, put aids into Roll20. So I'll give you a perfect example here. Let's go into Ghosts of Salt Marsh. So I'm going to go in there real quick for you and show you kind of what I have done. There's some of the characters there. Very rich group of people. So I am going to flip over to here and I will show you some of the maps because it's kind of cool. Now, keep in mind there'll be a spoiler alert. So any of my players watching this, please don't watch this. There are spoiler alerts. So let's go here real quick. So, putting in a map of Faerun. Alright, let's see if I got this in here and if it'll load up properly. Come here, where are you? I love this. There it is. Alright, so, got to keep blocking out while I'm doing my cast here with you. But you notice I brought this in. Now, this is a map that has, what is it? Salt Marsh. Woohoo! And I put on little lines to show them which directions the people go. So let me do this real quick and I'll clear those away. So you have roads on here. You have cities. You have places they want to go. So, you know, the Mirror of Deadman. Originally, when this thing was designed, it was designed for Greyhawk. The Salt Marsh. It was an old module that's been converted. So I've converted it, a lot of it with the help of other people, to Faerun. So if you look at this as I zoom out a little bit, there's all the area. And it shows where it plays in, with Neverwinter and Helm's Hold and Galkgrim and Long Saddle and Amphail and Waterdeep. So there's some of the areas that you may know, Tribor. These are all areas that you kind of know. So I utilize that. Now, I also brought in the city. So I had to put them which way it is, but look what I did on here. As part of this, yes, because we upside down it a little bit where it is. I've put in, if you notice, locations. So they can look at that and say, okay, that's this one, and this one. So it makes it easy for my characters to remember what's what in the town. Things you got to do in these things. Now, with the multiculturalism, I've also brought in, let's see, the ship here. Now, this ship, not giving too much away, is a ship that you may come upon. It's an area where the characters are. On this ship, not to give away anything, you got the crew on there all ready to go for them. But notice, what is my second mate near the jolly boat? She is not Nordic, is she? No. She is from Kalim Shan, as is one of the guys down there near the lizard folk. So, there are, and as is number 2 up there, he is not from Kalim Shan. He is from, what is it? Oh God, it's the southern area that they consider Africa's in the desert. He's from there. What brought him up? Well, it's a fishing village. His people wanted to go for greener pastures, and they found a way up there through passage of ships and made it to the land. Makes sense, right? He immigrated. So it gives you an idea kind of what you need to do when you do your maps. Bring in different people of different backgrounds. Balam. Balam is this guy right here. Balam is one of the NPCs. He is a blue-skinned tiefling. Ooh, that's something new, right? Balam is from Kalim Shan. Balaam talks with the accent, and he goes, "Welcome, I am Balaam, and I'm glad to make your acquaintance." Again, my accent is not perfect. I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. I am literally trying to embody the differences in the accenting from that world. Lyra, she likes to purr and talk, and she draws things out like a cat does. She is all cat. Absolutely. Now, one of our characters right here, she is Faye. She is now she got a new hat on there with a bicorn or tricorn hat because she's also a sailor now and she loves it. Mindset of a 13 or 14-year-old because she grew up in a Fae realm. But she changes colors. So, isn't that funny that she changes colors with the different people? Then there's Nicodemus the gnome. Nicodemus is from somewhere else as well. I don't think, there he is. Nicodemus is right here with the purple hair. Nicodemus grew up in town, but his family is not from there. They're immigrants. And his family goes back to the first world, where the gnomes come from. Not your silly gnomes, but your truly fey, dangerous gnomes. Then you have Silver. She's a moon elf, put a giant moon on there. She's from the north. Then you have, ta-da! Yes, a drow in the party. But wait, there's more. We also have, and I don't think I have Yukiha on here. Yukiha is a gender-neutral kobold, a white kobold from the 10 Towns that Haven plays. Really wonderful. I use the they, the them, all the different things. Because again, you're trying to embody the cultures they come from. So that said, number one, study the areas. Get to know the cultures. Immerse. Try to understand and look from their point of view. What would they have brought and mixed to the cultures, and what would have brought them to where they are? And then, how do they look, sound? You have to kind of embrace and embody that. And don't be verbose in describing an area, but use 3 or 4 sentences that evoke powerful images of what you want to get across to the people there. I have enjoyed this. It's good to get another GM tips in. I know these have been a little longer, but remember, I haven't done these in a while. So please bear with me on these, and hopefully this information will help you. Rewatch these, because I do that with other people. Sometimes something hits you the first time, that the second time will be totally different. You'll pick out something totally different. But it's part of developing and growing as a GM and a DM. And again, I put this in fantasy. You can do the same with the stars, with modern, with whatever thing you're trying to do, superheroes. It's all about taking the concepts that I've discussed and running with them. Thank you again. I appreciate all of you that watch my GM tips. I really do. And I hope you have a wonderful week of gaming. Thanks again.